Right, welcome for another podcast, and this one is really special because finally we're in Biggin Hill, and I've really been looking forward to it of many reasons. One is because it's one of my favorite sports that happens here, which is Formula One. It's always been kind of like the thing that could kind of put me in front of the television. So we're going to talk a lot more about that. But welcome to the podcast, and welcome, Claire. It's really great of you to take the time and join us in this. So just tell me a little bit about you and what you do for the team here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So my role is one of oversight of all of the technology initiatives that we undertake. So anything that is within our IT division that's non-standard BAU race operations, anything that's new innovative work that we do with our partners, including Lenovo, we work, my role and my team make sure that we've got the right people, structure, governance, budget in place to make all of those initiatives successful.
And we just walk through your operations, which is like super impressive. Unfortunately, we can't show all of it. We'll show some clips during the video feed, but I mean, this is very much a technology operation.
Yeah, it is.
You have a big data center.
We do, and it's such a great thing to see in action. I came back from Austin on Tuesday, so I was at the race, and one of the things I do at the race is to give our partners and their guests tours of our event technical center. So we have our base here at Biggin Hill, and then we have our traveling tech center, which moves from race to race to race. And one of the things that we offer our partners is to show their guests around our event technical center. And it is the most technologically advanced remote broadcast operation in the world. And it has been since COVID. So as we approached 2020 and COVID, we had a 3 to 4 year roadmap to move our broadcast operations from being all fully in person at track to being a remote operation. And then COVID came and the lockdowns, and what was a 3 to 4 year roadmap became a 10-week.
So like squeezed down to.
Absolutely, yep, a 10-week process. And we were the first sport to be back broadcasting live around the world during COVID. So quite an amazing technology operation.
What I don't think people know is that, so you have the central operations here in Biggin Hill, but then you actually have, a traveling circus that travels around for every race, you basically build a complete setup, right? So before Thursday race day, you build everything up, and that's what you pack it down again, and then you fly into the next race. So it's a pretty big operation.
Correct. Yeah, it's quite amazing actually what we do. You're absolutely right. We have two structures, two sort of event center structures that can be put up and taken down. They leapfrog one another from race to race to race, and the structure itself arrives 10 days before the race begins. And then gradually from that 10 days towards race weekend, our other kit arrives. We have one set of all of our other tech kit that gets flown from race to race. So we have racks that are in containers that are shaped to be the size of a Boeing 777 cargo hold. The racks are on anti-vibration mounts, and we when we get to track, they're opened almost like a suitcase. Everything's plugged in, switched on. We have 8 racks in each container. We have 3 containers, and they get flown around the world. And and then at the end of the race, everything's decommissioned. And so we have a version of the tech that you see here in terms of our broadcast gallery, in terms of our sound mixing booth, that all gets flown around the world as part of that traveling tech circus that you described. But yeah, it is really quite phenomenal what we do. And the countdown from 10 days on to set up our event technical center at each race it's incredible.
And I just heard this morning that it's actually happening just before the races actually starts on a Thursday. So it's not like you fly in and you use weeks for preparation and setup. So it's kind of like actually something that happens within a few days.
Absolutely.
That's pretty amazing.
It's incredible. And the team are so skilled at it, and it's so slick. So on a Sunday evening, once the race is complete, the team who are on site start to decommission everything. They fold up chairs, tables, they fold up the broadcast gallery and the TV screens, they unplug and close up those containers that I talked about. Everything then gets loaded onto a truck, taken to the airport, and it's usually flown out on the Monday after the race, and it arrives at our next race location on the Tuesday, where the team at that next location start unpacking, setting everything up, rigging we call it. So all of the rig team will set everything up within the event technical center and around the track for all of the operations that we broadcast, ready for the high-speed track test on Thursday. So normally from Tuesday when the kit arrives, certainly by the Thursday lunchtime, everything's ready to go.
That's incredible.
It's phenomenal.
I mean, I really think CIOs and tech people could learn a lot from that operation. I mean, kind of that for inside such a short time frame, you kind of basically built, well, a copy of what you have here in Biggin Hill, right? Maybe a slightly smaller, but with all of the cameras, and I mean, it's hundreds of people that are operating that, I guess.
Yeah, hundreds of cameras, about 150 mics around the circuit. It's up to 60 kilometers of cable that we run, fiber cable that we run around the circuit to transmit our broadcast. So yeah, it's phenomenal.
I think we should owe people the explanation of, so you're running the broadcast for all of the races. That's everything that comes out of Biggin Hill is eventually the feed that everybody will see on the television or wherever they're seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Track, our event technical center is like a data acquisition hub. All of the data points that come in from the cameras, from the microphones, from the cars, the telemetry data and timing data from the cars, that all comes into our event technical center. We call it the ETC, that's our shorthand. So it all comes into our ETC, where it is the race director, actually brings together what we call the track mix. And that is essentially the TV program. So it's curated at the track, and then it's sent back here to Biggin Hill. We have two fiber optic pipes that come from our event technical center, wherever in the world it is. That's provisioned as our backbone, and we send our broadcast twice, or 4 times actually, because each has 2 fibers, across those pipes. They come back into this building here at Biggin Hill, but they're geographically diverse, so they never meet again once they leave the track until they get back here. They come into this building in 2 different locations in the building, and they don't meet again until they reach our server room here. So it's quite phenomenal that when you think about just even that itself, that they're completely separate. We have those 4 fibers, 2 and 2. We can go down to just 1 of those 4 fibers and still broadcast.
If somebody digs it up.
Yeah. I mean, we have, there's the reason for the redundancy and resilience is exactly in case that happens. Ne've never had that scenario, but in case, trawlers.
Never say never.
Well.
We knock on.
Touch wood, it's metal. But yeah, absolutely. So we've never had to invoke any of our DR procedures. But we do test them every week. Once that center is set up, all of our technology is set up on a Thursday afternoon within the high-speed track test, actually, which we'll be running today for Mexico. The team practiced our disaster recovery process.
Today, so.
Yeah, it is. Practice our disaster recovery processes. Take out one fiber, fails over, take out the other, fails over, take out both.
Do the dummy test all the way through.
We practice it in every single race. Yeah, every single race.
So you can actually detach Biggin Hill and still run a TV feed out with, less complications.
Yeah, it usually is without the graphics. So we can run a feed to meet our broadcast obligations to our broadcast partners. So we have around 60 broadcast partners around the world. Yeah. The route for the broadcast comes from our ETC back here to Biggin Hill through those pipes, and then it's shared out to our broadcast partners from here.
Yeah, so it's Biggin Hill transferring the feed to 60 partners across the world.
Correct.
And they don't necessarily see the same feed because there's a difference to Saudi versus Mexico versus
No,
Sweden where I live, or is it the same
they
feed?
do see the same feed.
Okay.
So that's the track mix that is produced at the track. They see the same feed. The only difference is regional variations, whether it's for graphics or local sponsorships, that sort of thing. So where there is a particular brand sponsoring perhaps something in the APAC region, the graphics in the APAC region might be different, say, to Europe or North America. That's the only variation. The TV show itself, the program, it's the same program that's shown around the world.
Yeah, so do you have the latest count on how many viewers you have every time that you broadcast? Hundreds of millions.
I know that we have 827 million fans globally.
Yeah.
That's our fan reach around the world. How many of those view on a race by race basis?
More than half.
I don't have that figure to hand, but I know it's
if you're a fan, you have to watch it.
It's incredibly high. Yeah, it is.
825 million
fans around the world. Yeah.
That's an incredible number.
I know.
I don't think
it's phenomenal.
Any other organization, well, football for sure, right? But if you have a World Cup feed, then for sure is. But it's pretty impressive. All right, so that's the central operation of Biggin Hill. So what kind of role does technology play for you guys? Because I guess within the last 5 years, it's happened a lot to the feed. I mean, the amount of cameras, the amount of angles. Everybody can get in the race car. You can listen to what they're saying to some extent. You have, I think it's 9 cameras within the cars.
Yep, 9 cameras in each car, and the cameras have multiple angles that they can take. So the data points that come back to our ETC, it's incredible. To give you an idea of the size of it, those 2 pipes that I talked about that transfer our broadcast from the circuit, they have the capacity for 10.5 gigabits per second. And when the cars are on the grid, ready for lights out, we're broadcasting across those 2 pipes 8.5 gigabits per second, of which 3.5 gig is data coming from the cars themselves. So it's a pretty incredible amount of data being transferred.
I guess you have a good wireless network then.
Yes.
It's pretty incredible. So if you I mean, really, you have to translate all of the stuff you just heard down to when you are in front of your television, and you can actually see how complicated it is. But back to our question is, so how do you see technology? Technology in sports in general, we can take Formula One, are we interfering too much? Because I had a conversation around football, right, where we're going to be sponsoring the World Cup next year, right? And for sure, there is a huge discussion about what kind of role does technology play for the referee? How much interaction are we allowing? It's the same thing for here, is that we can kind of, see everything. I guess 9 cameras, the microphones, hundreds of cameras around track, right? Is it too much, or is it just a part of the experience? What sells the sport?
I think for us, where we have so many fans globally, we know that only 1% of our fans are likely to make it to a race. So
yes,
our fans are at the heart of everything that we do, and we're always looking for ways to engage with them, to give them the best view of Formula One, even when they're not at track. So it's really important to us to give them all of those amazing, the slow-mo camera shots where the sparks are coming off the back of the car, or the cat cam, which is the one on the cable that goes down the pit lane. And, I think to get those shots of the track and of the circuit, it's quite phenomenal to see it from the comfort of your living room when you can't be there. So I think for us, everything we do, as I said, underpins keeping our fans engaged in the sport and helping them to understand the sport and getting the best out of what we broadcast. So I think technology underpins everything. And I think there's an expectation that it is available now, I think, in sport. I think it's not just about what we broadcast, it's about how fans can engage with it, whether there's competitions or fantasy leagues or, sport is a very emotive thing for fans. And so the more fans of any sport, not just Formula One, can feel that they are actively participating and, a part of that ecosystem of that particular sport, I think it's a phenomenal experience for our fans.
So I think that's a good translation, that only 1% comes to a real race. I've been there, by the way, so I think it's the most fantastic. If you can afford it, it's really an immersive experience. Even though you just sit in one point in the stadium, right, and you see the car racing by you with 300 kilometers per hour, it's still the experience is amazing. But I guess TV gives you. I always had a friend saying I would never go to a race again because it's so far away from the TV experience. Right, so it's two different things.
It is very different.
But I mean, so on the other side, and that's maybe more you having a personal opinion about it, is that for the other side of it, which is the race cars and the drivers, all of that, technology is interfering, right? But they're being set a lot of rules and regulations about how much you can actually develop and how far you can go. I guess that's all right. We need to have those around the sport to ensure that it doesn't go crazy, because I guess AI and technology can take it to somewhere where we don't want to take it.
Yeah, I think within our sport, there's always going to be a safety element that's needed.
Yes.
And I think technology can really help us with that. So when we think about, the safety and health of the drivers, to be able to track, monitor what the car's doing, how the drivers are performing, I think it's always going to be helpful to keep people safe. And that's a key thing, not just for our sport, but from a regulation point of view with the FIA, the more that we can understand what's happening, I think using the technology, I think it's always going to be a good thing when it comes to health and safety of everyone involved.
Especially safety. Yeah. And that's really something that's developed over the years, right? It's becoming really a big factor of keeping the driver safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how does anyone end up in a job like you? So how do you end up here? I mean, it must be amazing, the dream job. Being here must be kind of like part of a dream. I mean, it's where you go down and see how the broadcasts is done. It's really amazing.
It is amazing.
So how do you get here? How do you?
Well, so I didn't start my career in IT. My career started in recruitment, actually. So very focused around people rather than technology.
Yes, it's a good start.
Very much so. And at that time, I mean, technology in business was still so different than it is now. And I worked in branch operations. I was in a recruitment office in the northeast of England. And at that time, the organisation I worked for were rolling out the first email system so we're going back to the 90s, rolling out the first email system, and it wasn't even an email address per person, it was one per branch. So it was your branch number. It was Lotus Notes was the email system. That shows how long ago it was. And because I was sort of, my undergrad degree was in business, so it did cover some aspects of technology, but it wasn't particularly computer science focused. But because I was young and I wasn't scared of the tech, like somewhere, I was always the one who was, okay, you have the email on your computer, and if there were ever any problems with the printer, Claire, could you take a look at it? So very much got into it through just learnt on the job and along the way. And then when I was looking to change roles, had built a great relationship with our IT support manager, who was based at our central office in North London, and relocated from where I was living to take that role within the IT support team. Didn't particularly like IT support. It was a bit too reactive, and dealing with problems all day, every day was not my thing. And then moved on to projects and worked in the world of projects then.
Still IT?
Still IT, yeah, IT projects, all technology projects. And so some of my early projects were around rolling out wide area networks or installing Wi-Fi systems, time capture systems for our temporary workforce. And then ultimately ended up working on at the time, there was a bit of a race for the first online recruitment system, web-based recruitment system, which is so common now. But back then it wasn't. There was a bit of a race between the company I worked for and another recruitment organisation as to who could get this web-based recruitment system out there the quickest. And I ended up working with our global IT team, which were based out of Madrid. So I travelled to and from Madrid on this project and worked with some incredible minds and some really experienced technologists, and just went on from there, really.
Very often I hear when ask people in these podcasts, and it's like, how did you start in your career? And it's very often people are saying, it's like, yes, we had a problem with the printer and people were shouting in the room, who can fix the printer? And you kind of volunteer, say, okay, I can try and do it. But yeah, I had absolutely no background or experience in IT, but that's how the journey starts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then for your job here, is that something you apply for, or you headhunted, or it's like, I guess it's not a job ad?
No, so I'd worked with Formula One in a consulting role for a couple of years, and then so sort of made connections and proved myself and what I could do and what I was capable of and my experience. And so when an opportunity came up, it just really went from there in terms of the discussion. And yeah, the role I do now is quite diverse. So it's a combination of quite typical IT sort of corporate technology projects, but then also the really cool, innovative tech projects that we do with our partners. We have an amazing partnership network of technology partners. And so it's really great to work with them and, see what's coming up new across the tech space. Each partner brings something different when it comes to technology. And so it's a really great breadth of solutions that we have access to.
And that's how you use your technology partnerships, is you kind of invite people in, you're inviting Lenovo in, and we kind of make a brain dump on this is where we think technology could take your operation. And okay.
It's very much a partnership, and so we'll have shared ideation sessions where we understand what our partners are working on, new solutions, new tech that's coming to the market. We sometimes work with them to help shape that. Other times we might be early adopters of that and give feedback. Other times we know that something's already in the market and it's a solution that we feel would be really great for us somewhere within our organisation. So a combination of starting points, really.
So getting back to your experience and your career and all of that, so how do we get more women into tech? Because still, if I look at diversity in the IT business, it's not very good.
No, it's really interesting, actually. So my career in IT, when I moved from recruitment into IT, started 25 years ago. And over that time, it did start to gradually improve. I think within F1, because it is motorsport, and IT in motorsport.
It's very uncommon.
It is uncommon.
Yeah.
It is uncommon. And the nature of our business is, there is, in certain roles within our organisation, there's a lot of travel involved as you move from race to race. So about 2/3 of our race operations team now are based here, but there's still about 1/3 of our team that travel to races. And of course, that works for a certain time in your life, when you maybe don't have commitments or you don't have children. And it works, I think, for a certain demographic of people, but for women more so than men, and certainly when children come along, for both women and men, it can become much trickier to have such a heavy travel-based role. So how do you get more women in? Great question. I wish I had the magic miracle answer, because it's something that I think about a lot. How can we encourage women to come into not just IT but into motorsport as well?
Yes, we actually just did a round across our region, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and we kind of interviewed our own teams about the employees we have, and it turns out that the people we get from directly from university into Lenovo, like young, then you're like 20, 25. It's working exceptionally well. So it takes more training, or it takes longer for people to kind of be operational in whatever job they're taking. But across all of the markets, it turns. So I think for us the solution is that we need to have incubation programs where we take more people in that age, and then we help them. We kind of direct them and help them to plan an early career in Lenovo, because again, if you start in an early role, you can get to where I am in. It was just general manager for the region, and kind of just nothing stopping you is that inside a company like ours. So I think that what I've talked to our HR department is that more people in at an earlier stage, and then kind of have don't get me wrong, the patience to kind of help people in their early career.
And then what about retention then? As life changes, seasons of life change.
Yeah.
How do you manage the retention?
That's a good question. Yeah, but I think that's with the benefit of we're like a huge company. So we have different regions. You're kind of like we're always kind of helping people to go to another job. So I think you should have the right amount of job rotation.
Opportunity.
Yeah, you have to have job rotation, and you can give people to switch jobs from a very outbound job where if you're in sales and you have to go visit customers, coming back saying, I want to do something else, and you can go have a few years in marketing. And I think at least for my employees, is the ones that works best and has the best foundation to do what they do is people that have been in different areas. And especially AI is that if you look at AI, and all of the people I'm talking to about AI is, everybody is saying is AI is not coming from central IT. AI is coming from all parts of the company.
Very much so.
So you have to hire people from manufacturing, from HR, from supply chain, and those are the people that will collaborate and build next generation AI projects. So I think it's very much about rotation and being open. So where's technology taking us?
Oh gosh, there are
a big dark place.
Yeah, I mean that's such a big question, isn't it? I don't think a big dark place if we lead it responsibly. I think if we are the master and we are the ones who are driving the change, I think there is a level of responsibility that we all have with IT, with AI specifically, but certainly with any new technology solutions. For me, I think, the tech is great, but there has to be a really strong use case, a really strong reason for doing it. And, the tech's changing so quickly, unless you have a very strong use case and you target it with absolute laser focus and go for it. By the time if you don't do that, by the time you get there, the tech will have changed again. So there's a speed to market that I think we need to really be aware of and have front of mind. In my world, which is very much based around projects and program and delivery and introducing new technology into organizations, I spent a huge amount of time implementing ERP systems and all sort of large enterprise scale applications at a point in my career. But the way in which we implemented those was very different than the way in which technology needs to be approached and implemented now. So I think there is an awareness of the speed of introducing some of these. So to start quite small, keep use cases quite contained, prove the technology. So, if we take AI as an example, there are still lots of people, especially non-technical people, who are a little bit fearful, a little bit concerned. Is it going to take my job? What does this mean for me as a person? And I think there is a need for organizations to really demonstrate to its workforce the value that AI can bring. So all of those really, repetitive, monotonous admin tasks, that's where it can really help support an organization so that its workforce can focus on the real value add, the real higher value, the strategic work, the activities that aren't the more sort of mundane ones. And I think picking those use cases first, building people's trust in the technology, proving that these solutions are credible, that they do have a place in the workplace, and for the broader organization to, view them and implement them in a responsible way, I think is really going to be key to wherever technology goes.
Yeah, we talked exactly about that in my team in this week on IT transformation, is that we kind of need to pick the ones where we can take over some of the tasks that you talked about and kind of help people. I think I think good leadership teams base their decisions on good data, but maybe I'm too honest when I talk about some of the stuff that we've been looking at, where we looked at customer data and we all realized we have the data, we just don't know where it is. So a big part of it is that we kind of have to dig 2 steps deeper than we normally do to kind of extrapolate the right data points to build AI on top of it. So there's a lot of companies. So this is one thing that we did, the CIO report that we do every year, where we interview 600 CIOs about IT or AI. And the one thing that always come back is so difficult to prove return of investment, but is it really necessary? So you don't have to kind of jump into it and embrace technology?
Is it necessary to prove ROI?
Return of investment all the time.
I think there is always a need to demonstrate value, but that value to a business doesn't necessarily need to be tangible financial value. There are other types of value. I think it just is dependent on the organization to identify what the value criteria are for that organization, what's important for your org. And then the value that you get from any initiative could be based on your own value criteria. So it doesn't always have to be financial. I think if you start with smaller use cases, then perhaps it doesn't need to be financial, but it really depends on the organization and what values are important.
So I think there's a very important proof point to what you said about the adoption of the projects, is that, I've said this many times in the podcast, is that the adoption rate of new technology it used to be 10 years, now it's 5, maybe it's even 3. So that's why we need to move faster and we need to adopt faster because of that.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not because you're not running out of power, compute power in your data center, because there's enough of it, right? You just need to figure out how to use it in the best possible way.
Absolutely. And I think for us, where we have so many fans, we have a huge amount of data. To your point around data there, we have so much data. And I think if we were to look at a use case that was so big, the next sort of challenge is, once we've made that decision, is, well, how do we get our data in the right shape to support AI? Which
is a big problem.
So foundational. I mean, if you don't have the right quality of data, whatever you're trying to run across the top of it is not going to spit out the right response. So wherever we can just, slice deep through our data and really enrich it and make sure that for a particular use case, we focus on a particular data set and we go that way rather than that way, that we can absolutely make sure that our data that we need to support that use case is enriched and cleaned and in the absolute best condition. It's almost like that laser focus on the data and that laser focus on the tech, and then when they're ready, we bring them together, because it's just foundational to everything, really.
So if you give a good advice to young people out there that want to go into IT, women especially, what would be kind of your advice? If you kind of fresh off university and you kind of thinking about where to go in terms of your first job?
Yeah, I would say pick something that really interests you. Would be my first top tip. Pick an area of IT that really lights you up, that makes you go, oh wow, that's really cool. Because if you think that about something, you'll naturally be curious, you'll be really open to it, you'll be, really wanting to understand it more. And, from a university undergrad degree, that gives you a great foundation. But the next level is really about consolidating what you've learned and integrating what you've learned in practice. And I think the best way to do that is to do it through something that you really enjoy doing. So pick an area of IT that you love, focus on that. And I think to be a specialist is sometimes a good thing, but to not do that at the expense of just having an awareness of what else is going on around you, because, trends in technology change and demand for skill sets change. So I think focus to get started. And then once you have the foundations and you've integrated your learning, then to expand a little bit and just be curious, where next?
And don't be scared. Be bold and don't be scared.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, very good advice. It's amazing being here, and thank you very much for taking the time, Claire. It's been a pleasure. So that was the podcast from Biggin Hill, and we'll soon be back again with more great content. Thank you very much.